Franchising is the most misunderstood and most overlooked form of entrepreneurship. We're here to educate you and help you find the entrepreneur within. Franchising is not all about the French fries.
We find that individuals who are exploring business ownership tend to have a lot of misperceptions and misunderstandings about the franchise industry. So what we want to do is help prospective business owners make confident and educated decisions before moving forward or not moving forward with a business. Welcome to Unpredicted Entrepreneur.
Hi, welcome to episode 101 of Unpredicted Entrepreneur. I'm Roxanne Rapske, and this is my colleague, Sarah Waskow. We created this podcast to bring you education and information about business ownership and all things franchising. And we always have a wide variety of guests today. So our guest today is a founder. His name is Dan Claps. He's the CEO of Voda Cleaning and Restoration. He's also a longtime franchise executive. Dan, we know you're super busy. You've been on the road for many, many days, and we're so glad you took time out of your day to meet with us. So thank you.
Yes, excited to be here, and thanks for having me on. Always enjoy talking with you both. So excited to start this podcast together.
Yeah. So we always like to start with your background. So we talked a little bit to prep for this. I asked you, or we asked you, when were you bitten by the entrepreneurial bug? So kind of take us through your background, and then we'll get into your franchise experience.
Sure. Yeah. I swear I came out of I was born with the entrepreneurial bug. Maybe my mom swallowed it while I was in the womb, because I've always been entrepreneurial. Pretty early in my life, I knew that entrepreneurship was the direction I wanted to go. I was the kid with the lemonade stand. I sold lacrosse balls to my teammates. Really, anytime I could create a business as a kid, I loved seeing something kind of come out of nothing. So started young. When I was in college, I had a staffing and recruiting side hustle that turned into a business, and got into franchising pretty much right out of in my early 20s. So always been in the entrepreneurial kind of realm.
That's so interesting. So what prompted you to do staffing when you were in college?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, a lot of times business just kind of happens serendipitously. I was in college. I had a friend that was a promotional model or a brand ambassador. And she told me that she was making at the time, like $30 an hour. And in college, that's pretty good pay. And I think she said something like, well, they really only hire women. I said, well, I want to do it. I can talk, and talked my way into originally being like a brand ambassador for different products, and handing out t-shirts at concerts, et cetera. It was a great thing to do. And then I started to notice that other brand ambassadors had trouble with the paperwork and getting there and all the kind of nuances to it. So I started hiring brand ambassadors and staffing events and taking a residual on the hourly rate, and started building teams doing that. So it was a great business for me. Learned though that I didn't really have a lot of great systems or processes. I was the business, I was the whole thing. And so that was a great experience. In my early 20s, I tried to, look at what could I do with that business. It just wasn't really scalable. And so in 2014, my dad actually said, why don't you look at franchise opportunities? And that's what inevitably got me into franchising.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because I was really curious at a young age. So many people don't think about franchising until they've been in business for a while, or they've had a corporate career for a while. So I was intrigued by the fact that you were attracted to franchising right out of college. So tell us about the beginning of your franchising experience.
Yeah, like most people, I didn't even know what a franchise really was outside of food, like McDonald's and things like that. But what happened was when I was in high school, for a brief period of time, I sold Kirby vacuum cleaners door to door. And I found I had a natural kind of ability at that. And so when I started looking at franchises, home services really stood out to me, because I saw that if the bar was low, the barrier of entry, if you could build a better mousetrap and customer service experience, you could be successful. The problem was, at that time, I didn't have a ton of capital for a home services business. I was 22 years old, didn't really have access to lending or anything like that. And so I found a franchise called Murphy Business and Financial, which is a business brokerage franchise. And it was a much lower investment. And you could actually start out as an agent. So I started with Murphy in 2014, which was a great experience because they started in the 80s. They had 300 locations. It was a more mature franchise. And I was able to learn a lot from that. Did not know that later in life I'd become a franchisor, but looking back, it was a great perspective and gives me a unique lens, having been on that side of the franchisor-franchisee relationship.
So you did Murphy, and were you brokering businesses at that young age? Okay. And so
I don't know how I was getting hired, but yes, I was a business broker. I joked that no one else was answering the phone on like the business listing sites. And so I kind of just won business by being, aggressive and there being active in New Jersey, where I'm originally from. I also had the support of the franchisor. I had a great regional manager there. So often I would get to an appointment, he would come with me, and we would kind of position it like this is the kind of the seasoned business broker, and then I'm the aggressive young guy that's going to go out there and list your business and find a buyer. And it was a great experience because I was selling a lot of car washes and gyms and all kinds of different businesses. And somewhere along the lines, I started to become the franchise resale expert in my area. And so that's really kind of what got me into franchising even further. And over time, realized I really enjoyed the new franchise purchases. A lot of my clients, if they couldn't buy that specific franchise resale, would become interested in new territory. And through that franchise, we had a membership to a consultant network. And so over time, started really focusing more on franchise consulting before inevitably starting my previous business after that.
Well, that's kind of what led you into you created 2 years later, you created a leads. Didn't you have a leads generating business?
Yeah, what happened was, I was a pretty decent business broker, but I was also kind of swimming upstream. I had less experience. I remember a lot of, clients that maybe it was, I didn't have as much of a background, but what I found was I was really good at lead generation, finding clients, finding leads. And so in 2016, I ended up starting a lead generation company with a partner in the franchise space. And so from 2016 to 2022, built that company. My whole life was centered around lead generation. And this was in my 20s, so very formative years of my career. And what happened was in lead generation, if you can imagine, everybody wants to talk to you because you've got, what they want, which is leads. And so I was fortunate to be able to get into rooms with founders of franchise brands and CEOs. And I spent a lot of time traveling the country, going to conferences where franchisors gather to learn how to be a better franchise company. And for me to generate business, right? To generate lead customers. But in doing that, I spent years going to conferences, watching seminars on how to be a better franchisor. So kind of learned franchising by accident before inevitably exiting that business in May of 2022, and then taking some of that capital to start Voda.
I love that you said did it kind of by accident, because we hear that so much. People end up in franchising. That's kind of why we named our podcast Unpredicted Entrepreneur, because a lot of times people have no expectation that they're going to end up going down this path. So you had a successful sale of this lead generation business that you built with your partner, business partner. And then you took that money, and we introduced that you're the CEO and founder of Voda Cleaning and Restoration. So tell us a little bit more about Voda and this business and how this has evolved for you.
Yeah. So, that exit was great. I was 29 years old when that happened and ready to do my next thing. Being in franchising, I had met so many key players and had this wide Rolodex of relationships that I could recruit into the company. And so the first thing I did was start focusing on bringing on rockstar franchise executives into the company. So knew I wanted to go into home services, also knew that I had never run a franchise brand in general or in home services. And so first thing I did was recruited our COO and co-founder. His name is Zach Nolte. He was the president of a large home service franchise brand prior to joining us, and also had started a home service brand that he was able to exit to a platform. And so he had that expertise. His skills were very different than mine. My skills different than his. And so we made a great partnership. And then we went out and we recruited, even more people. We recruited a great chief marketing officer and franchise development director and attorneys and everything else. And I remember in the fall of 2022 going to a family event, and my family said, Dan, what are you doing? You have a CMO, a COO, a VP of sales. Who are these people? You don't even have a business yet. And my answer was, we're going to get the right people on the bus in the right seats, and then we'll figure out where we go. And that's exactly what we did. So we started exploring different verticals. We looked at roofing and painting and cleaning. And one day we took a piece of paper and we wrote down what we called our playbook, which was what we wanted out of a business, which was really 5 things. Number one, a business that was recession resistant, a need not want, something that was not affected by a pandemic or, God forbid, a war or a change in the economy. 2, we wanted a business that was third party paid, meaning in our case, insurance pays the bills, but like some third party paying the bill versus the customer maybe being a little bit more attached to their wallet. 3, we wanted a business that was non-skilled labor. So something where we could hire people with a good attitude that are good with their hands, but they didn't have to have a special license. I'll give you an example. I love the plumbing industry, but it's a need, not a want. Insurance pays the bills, but it's very specialized when it comes to a license. Whereas our business, which I'll tell you about in a moment, is non-skilled labor. We wanted a business that we could generate leads in a predictable, scalable, and automated way around the country, given my background, of course, but then in an industry where we felt like we could do that. And then finally, a business where it was not a fad, something that was tried and true, recession resistant, as I mentioned, something where the average unit revenues, whether it was a franchise owner or mom and pop, were known to be strong and unit economics would be strong. And that's where we really settled in on restoration because it checks all of those boxes.
You put a lot of thought into this, and we meet a lot of people that are interested in franchising their business, and we talk a lot about how expensive it is to become a franchisor. And you kind of just touched on that. Of course, not everybody does it the way that you did it, where you hire all these top level executives before you even have a business. But there's a huge investment that goes into becoming a franchisor. So thanks for taking us through that and sharing that. You've talked a couple times about your lead generation and being good at it. And before we keep going, I just wanted to back up for a second and ask you, what made you so good at lead generation? It's almost like you had like this little secret or something, like you did really well at it.
One is repetition, right? So a lot of time spent researching all the different ways to generate leads, which really there's 4 ways to generate leads in any business. You've got, one-to-one warm outreach, which is going to a local networking event, getting someone that knows you to refer you to someone, right? So one-to-one warm. And then the second lever you can pull is one-to-many warm, which would be posting on your social media and someone that knows you, seeing the content and then referring you to someone. And then there's one-to-one cold outreach, which is like, cold calling, direct mail, LinkedIn messages, things like that. And then finally, one-to-many cold outreach, which is running paid ads on Facebook or YouTube. That's very scalable, but of course, you're reaching out to a much larger cold audience. So I just really spent a lot of time learning those different verticals. I think it was really passionate. I'm really passionate about it. I'm fascinated how you can generate interest in something out of kind of thin air, right? So when you generate a lead, you're getting someone interested in something you're selling that is a solution to them. And, just creating that opportunity has always fascinated me. And so, when we settled on being in restoration. We loved the business. The only thing we didn't like about water restoration is although there's 14,000 water damage cases a day in America, and it's not just hurricanes, it's pipes breaking, toilets overflowing, all these different water infrastructure issues happening. If there isn't a water event or mold or fire event, then there's no business that day, right? Unless I stick a hose through your window while you're sleeping and flood your house. I can't convince you to dry your house or if it's not wet. But what's fascinating about our business is there's a cleaning side. We also do floor cleaning. So what happened was I met the founder of Voda. It's an amazing story. He moved here from Serbia in 2004, didn't speak any English, was a lifeguard, then a security guard, started cleaning carpets in 2006, watching YouTube videos. And in 2009, started the business. And when we met 15 years later, I fell in love with the business. He had great culture, great systems. I always think of the movie The Founder with Michael Keaton that plays Ray Kroc when he takes if you've seen the movie, he takes the the McDonald's founders out to dinner, gets to know their story. And the next day, it's like a crazy person saying, you got to franchise this outside their doors. That was kind of me with Dragon when we met.
That's awesome. I love that.
That is awesome. That's a great story. So you purchased Voda in 2023. And then you started franchising immediately after. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we met Dragon in October of 2022, and we spoke for a long time, doing due diligence, making sure it would be the right partnership. We made the acquisition of the brand in February of 2023. And then it was originally called DNA Pro Cleaning, which is a great name. It stands for Dragon and Arlene, which is his wife, and also their daughter, Angelina. So great name, but we felt like there could be a more nationally recognizable name. And so we worked with the branding agency and came up with Voda, which if you could see it on the background or something, it's a beautiful looking truck and brand. It's a very unique looking brand. But what's really cool about it is actually means water in Serbian. So we pay homage to the Serbian roots. We started franchising in April 2023. And, Roxanne, to your point, like being a franchisor, if you want to do it right, is definitely capital intensive.
Yeah.
And so I had put a substantial amount of my capital into the business, took out some loans and personally guaranteed my real estate and everything else. And when we launched in April 2023, we thought we would be the next big franchise. I couldn't have been more wrong. We struggled to get anyone interested in our brand for the first bit, and it was challenging. It was certainly a humbling experience before we ended up getting to where we are today.
So that is something that we hear from folks pretty regularly. It's hard to get started, hard to get your first franchisee. But I know you just said that you struggled. But how long did it take you to get your first franchisee?
Yeah, so in April we launched, and no one was really interested at all. We were spending about $70,000 a month on payroll because the mindset was, let's build a great team and systems and technology, and then kind of build it, and then they will come. And we were having trouble getting traction. May, June, we're passing, and I remember thinking, like, I should have just put that money in the stock market and got a cushy job, and I would have been set for retirement, like my dad said. But of course, I had to double down and do Voda. In June of 2023, I actually flew to a franchisor conference to try to get some inspiration because we only had so much runway, right? And franchising is a lot like technology. It either takes off or it doesn't. And so went to this conference, and I saw the CEO of a large trampoline franchise tell his story on the stage about how they almost went out of business when they first launched. And he had said to his wife at that time, the difference between us being broke and super broke is pretty much the same at this point. We're already so far in, we might as well double down. And that hit me right in the chest. I flew back home to my team and I said, we got to double down. Maybe we don't have both feet in the water. Maybe that changed, a little bit of luck, a little bit of timing. But on July 2nd, we ended up awarding our first franchise, then another on the 8th. And now we sit with just about 100 franchise owners and extremely strong system-wide sales and validation. So things changed, thankfully.
But that's really not, I know it was very painful because of your monthly burn, but that's really not that long to get your first franchisee. But was what, 3 months? So
yeah, 2 months, 3 months. So to us, that sounds really fast, because some of the other stories that we've heard from other franchisors, I know it was painful for you, obviously, trying to get started.
Yeah, I think the pain came from, like, we invested so heavily from, basically September, building the systems. In October. No MBA book would tell you this. No investor would tell you this. I also would tell someone never to do this. I wouldn't do it again. But we started building systems knowing we were going in restoration either way. And so I remember having the mindset, if we didn't make the acquisition in February, we would still go into restoration. But yes, 3 months seems short, but at that time, when you're losing that much money, it seemed long. But now it's a completely different story. But we continue that same practice of forward investing into people, and that's really paid dividends for us as far as the support systems that we have at Voda.
So you touched on your restoration, and you said cleaning. So when you say floor cleaning, what do you mean? Is it just carpets? Like, what else is there? Do you do other things?
Yeah, so our business is focused both on B2B and B2C. We do water mitigation if a house floods or a business has a pipe break. We do mold mitigation, removing mold from homes and businesses. Fire remediation, if there's a fire, we can get the smoke odor out. And then on the floor cleaning side, we do carpet cleaning, upholstery, tile and grout, air duct cleaning. And that allows us to get our foot in the door, right? So we can go to a commercial property and start doing floor cleaning for them as a way to lead to restoration work as they start to have it, and vice versa. The restoration business can feed our floor cleaning business. So it's really like two franchises in one, two revenue streams, but they complement each other because both are lead generation kind of tools for each other's service.
Yeah. So I think that leads in kind of the next question. You had, how many franchisees come back and buy more territory? You have a very high number of that. And so I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit more. And maybe what you just described as part of the contributing factor to people's success and then their desire to expand.
Yeah. So, first thing I'll tell you, with 100 franchise owners in franchising, if you can get 50 owners, maybe you have a good development process. Maybe you're silver tongued, if you will. If you have 100, you have to be doing something right. The product has to kind of sell itself. So the first thing I'll mention is the unit economics of our business. In our item 19, when we first acquired the business, the flagship store did 1.7 million gross sales with a 23% profit margin. 38% of the business was restoration and the rest was cleaning. We came in 2023 and helped take the business to actually 2.4 million in revenue. The revenue mix went 50-50 cleaning and restoration. We actually took the profit margin up to 27% profit. And that's after royalties, et cetera. And then in 2024, we were able to go up to from 2.4 to 2.7 and can maintain that still, 22% profit to scale into this year. More importantly, our average owner, the first year, it does $500,000 in their first year, top in $1 million, and our median kind of 25 top quartiles at 800,000. So the unit economics really makes sense in our business. Obviously, it's a high margin business, although we do encourage our owners to reinvest in the business in the beginning and grow. But 1 in 5 owners have bought more territory in the system, which is pretty cool. So we're at about 100 owners and 240 territories around the nation in about 30 states.
I'm always amazed when I see those emails come through that you guys have had another franchisee come back and buy more territory. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's very unique.
Yeah.
So congratulations to
congratulations
you on that.
Thank you. I think it's testament, Steve Miller, our VP of development, he's a part of the company, he's a partner in the company. He's involved in the business beyond someone just buying the franchise from him when we award a territory to them. He stays in touch. He's at all the events and the conferences and the calls. And our operations and development are super intertwined as far as ensuring that, one hand is talking to the other and that expectations are met in the process. And so what we've done is we've built large territories. The average owner will buy 2.5 territories on average. And then because we're methodical in making sure they don't overbuy territory, it actually turns out that they end up with more territory as they scale, and they're able to do that. We think it's really important that people's money is going toward the business less than to franchise fees. And so, but what's interesting is that ends up actually leading to more territories in the long run because we're focused on unit economics.
Well, that's interesting because then you had told us in the beginning you were only allowing them to buy one territory, and then that mindset changed, right?
Yeah, so I think the sweet spot for us is 2 to 3. We have owners that do 1. It really is dependent on the capital that they have, and a system that's growing like ours. I do find people like to have the second or third territory available to them. So that's where you see kind of that 2.5 territory average. We're a little bit unique because we have what's called a development schedule. So when they buy multiple territories, they're not opening all of them at once. But there's definitely economies of scale when someone has multiple, where it's not that they're investing double the amount into a second territory. There's only some of the costs that carry into that second territory.
Well, and I love the story you told on our prep call where there's somebody that wanted more territory and you backed them down to 1 because you didn't want them to run out of capital. And, that speaks a lot to your culture and just doing the right thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes it's a battle with franchise owners of us being disciplined, saying you're not ready for more territory, and perhaps they want to buy more territory. We really try to evaluate that, and even more so as we're growing and learning from the experience. I'm from New Jersey. I'm pretty direct. I can't tell you that everything in Voda we ever did was perfect. We've learned a lot through the experience, and as we add more layers to our leadership team, and dialing into the profit and loss statements of each of our owners. We're really working with them because at the end of the day, when you're a franchise company, we make our money by having successful franchisees that want to do this and want to grow. And so we try to really be a good steward of their capital and help them not overextend themselves into territory versus investing in their business, hiring salespeople, spending money on marketing, et cetera.
Love that. Yeah, I love that too. I love that you have their best interests in mind and you're going to tell them if you don't think that the path they're pursuing is going to lead to their success. So that speaks highly. We always tell everybody not all franchisors are created equal, and you run your business with a lot of integrity. So it's definitely to be commended. So Dan, if somebody's thinking about being a franchisee, business ownership, what tip would you like to share today for any prospective business owners?
I think the first thing is sometimes people get caught up that they're going to pay a royalty, that it's this expense. It's really an investment. You're able to leapfrog years of trial and error. I'll give you an example. The average home service business, non-franchise, just regular home service business, the average revenue is $100,000 to $200,000 the first year. Whereas in a system like ours, the first year is $500,000 average, right? So yes, you're paying a royalty, but think about how many trials and tribulations and mistakes you're avoiding, and that you're able to get to better unit economics quicker. I always try to encourage our franchise owners to remember that, especially if it's their first business. A lot of times they're actually doing fantastic and they just don't realize it, right? Because they don't have anything to compare it to. But when you're part of a network like Voda or another franchise, you're able to benchmark against other people. You're able to tap into the support of the franchise system. You're able to tap into economies of scale and buying power, purchasing power. There's a lot more benefit than the royalty. The royalty is an investment into a lot of infrastructure that you'd have to pay for anyway, except with your own teammates, versus having a marketing department, having a COO that you can call, having a success coach that you can work with. And sometimes just having a network of people that you can bounce ideas off of or vent. Business is hard. It's not ever going to be easy, especially the first few years. But I think in a franchise, you have this tribe of people going through the same thing as you and people further along than you that you can tap into. And I think that's really the power of being part of a franchise system. Could you do it on your own? Sure. But it's most of our franchise owners, like, they're successful people. Do I discount that they could do it on their own? Perhaps they could. It would just be harder and longer and more tiresome versus plugging into all the benefits that a franchise can provide.
Goes back to the implementer versus innovator thing where, you can spend years innovating or you could just jump on board and implement.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dan. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you or learn more about Voda Cleaning and Restoration, what would be the path that you would recommend that they would take to get that information?
What I found is a lot of our franchise owners have come from franchise consultants like yourself. So reaching out to you, I usually think is a great first step, because you both can help someone identify if we are the right business or potential business. That's usually a good step. I'm on LinkedIn, Dan Claps, CFE. You'll find me right away. I caution you though, if you connect with me, we've really got the LinkedIn algorithm figured out, so you won't be able to escape my face because we put out a lot of content. So, but yeah, if you connect with me, you'll see a lot about home services and franchising. We put out pretty much a video every day about our business and about franchising.
You are excellent at content creation. So kudos to you for that. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today on Unpredicted Entrepreneur. My name again is Sarah Waskow. It's Waskow. My colleague Roxanne Rapske, Rapske, is with me. We are very active on LinkedIn. Would love to connect with you. So please reach out to us there. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at FranNet of Dallas and Fort Worth. And please feel free to listen to Unpredicted Entrepreneur on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.